and thank you for joining us. I'm Charlene Farley, a member of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of the Emerald Coast. Each Sunday at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, until the end of this pandemic is over, we'll be streaming our services. We hope you'll join us. This morning, we're exploring how democracy, politics, and Unitarian Universalism are interwoven. Our sermon, The Heart of Democracy, was first delivered on July 10th, 2016 by UU minister Reverend Sue Brown at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Rockville. Although 4 years have passed since Reverend Browning delivered her message, I think that you'll find it as relevant in 2020 as it was in 2016. A Zoom discussion of the message will follow at 11 o'clock Central Standard Time on our Facebook page and our webpage, UUFEC.com. We begin our service with the lighting of the chalice, a symbol of our UU faith.
The Struggle for Freedom by Paul Sprecher. We light this chalice in memory of the courage of those who have struggled for freedom, the persistence of those who have struggled for justice, and the love of those who have built beloved communities.
Hello, my name is Lisa Farley, and I'm a member at UUFEC, and I am really excited and happy that today I get to present The Time for All Ages. So today I picked a book called Isabella, Girl in Charge, and it's by Jennifer Forsberry. If you enjoy this book, it is also available at the Niceville Public Library. This story I picked because for a few reasons, but the first reason is because it's about a young child with a very independent spirit. This child, Isabella, she could be described as smart, clever, tenacious, and independent. And those are all great qualities. And they're qualities that we nurture in our children at our fellowship. So I thought it was a great story for that reason. The second reason I chose this book is because it references inspiring, pioneering women, all women who helped build our democracy. And some of these women are women that I did not have a lot of knowledge about before I read this book. And as an adult, it made me ask some questions and do some research. And I think that's always a great thing. So hopefully some of our members of all ages might have some interesting questions after hearing this story. I will also tell you before I start, there are some fun play on words that if you know these people in history, you might get a nice chuckle from, or it might make you want to go and check some more information out. So I hope you enjoy this book as much as I do. It is called Isabella, Girl in Charge. We will begin now. I'm ready, said the little girl. Let's go. It's not time, Isabella, the mother said. It's not even daylight. You see how it's dark out there? My name is not Isabella, said the little girl. I am Susanna, mayor of this here town. And here is Susanna, and she has on a little sash that says, first female mayor. Well, Susanna, a little more sleep, please. I don't think we're in Kansas anymore. I'm ready, said the little girl. It's not time, Susanna, the mother said. Breakfast first. My name is not Susanna, said the little girl. I am Jeanette, and I'll represent you. Well, Jeanette, even when we're not in our house, we still eat a good breakfast. And here we see her as Jeanette. And it says, first female in Congress. Let's vote on breakfast. I want donuts, said the little girl. Your father and I vote oatmeal. That's 2-to-1 for a healthy breakfast. That's not fair, said the little girl. We each get 1 vote. That's fair, Jeanette, said the father. My name is not Jeanette, said the little girl. I am Nellie, and I prohibit you from going without me. Of course not, Nellie. Care for a mint? And in this picture, her sash says first female governor. Next page. I'm ready, said the little girl. Let's go. It's not time, Nellie, the mother said. I bet you know what she said. She said, I'm not Nellie. I'm Frances. New deal. Let's go. Well, Frances, we need to check out first. Please pack your things from the cabinet. I will help with that at a minimum. So here her sash says, first female cabinet member. I'm ready, said the little girl. Let's go. It's not time, Frances, the mother said. She's getting really frustrated. She's like, my name is not Frances. I am Sandra, and I will be the judge of when it's time. Well, Sandra, today's your day. Get your warm coat. It's cold in Washington, D.C. in January. And here her sash says, first female justice of the Supreme Court. Is it time? Asked the little girl. It's time, the mother said. And you can see the little girl's very excited. Let's hurry, the little girl said. Capital idea, said the father. Capital idea is a really nice clue. And if you look over here, you can see there's the Capitol that they're walking to. And the next page ends our story, and we kind of have to figure it out on our own. You can see that there's the little girl, Isabella, and she's with her parents, and she's at what looks like an inauguration. And we know it's for a woman because it says Madam President. And that has not happened yet in our history. But with little girls that have it, and little boys, and big girls and big boys that all have an independent spirit like Isabella, it will not be long before that will happen in our country. So I really liked sharing this story with you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I want to show you, if you get this book yourself out of the library, you can see that there's a really nice information on every person that was referenced in the book from history, and a great timeline over a couple pages that gives us a lot of information. And this is the great part of kids' books. I'm a grown-up, and I learned a ton from these 2 pages. So I really recommend this book to our members young and old, and I hope you enjoyed it, and have a good day.
Spirit of life and love, I come before you, black and brown and red and yellow and alabaster. I come longing for the simpler days that truly were never our lot. And I am an American. Hear these voices as in the complexity of our days. I am humanist and Christian, Muslim and Jew, pagan and atheist and Buddhist and UU, and I am an American. I am one who fought for my country, and I am at the same time one who protested war, and I'm an American. Amongst the divisions of our lives, I've struggled in poverty, and I've accepted the profits of wealth, and I am an American. I'm an owner of weapons, and I am one who would control our nation's guns, by limiting the who's and what's and how's, and I am an American. As light is shown on our divisions, I live with often unacknowledged privilege, and I am moved to rage at the complexity of intersecting oppressions, and I am an American. In the challenge of our days, I am one who supports my country, right or wrong, and I am one who claims the traditions of dissent, and I am an American. In this polarized season, I am Democrat, and I am Republican, I'm Libertarian, and I am an Independent, I am Green, and I am confused, and I am an American. Spirit of hope, sit with us in our diversities. Help us hear one another in our divisions. Grant that beginning in this community, we may honor one another's truths and know that a just and faithful tomorrow begins here in our hearts. For all our problems, with all our pain, with all our limitations and mistakes, we are Americans. Do you trust democracy? In his book, Healing the Heart of Democracy, Parker Palmer opens with words from conservationist Terry Tempest Williams. The human heart is the first home of democracy. It is where we embrace our questions. Can we be equitable? Can we be generous? Can we listen with our whole beings, not just with our minds, and offer our attention rather than our opinions? And do we have enough resolve in our hearts to act courageously, relentlessly, without giving up, ever trusting our fellow citizens to join us in our determined pursuit of a living democracy? Do you trust democracy? In your bones, do you trust it? Do you trust yourself and your fellow citizens? Have you ever feared the democratic outcome? Rhetoric is high and relentless these weeks, and while we like to claim our openness to difference, I sense that there are times we feign deep listening. At least I do. As the posturing and gamemanship barrages our senses, we retreat to our corners, sure in our truth. Or we may even retreat to well-honed middle positions. We duck as the messiness of ideas fly back and forth. They are not listening and not going to listen. It feels tough to engage. There's a hopelessness in the political climates of today. A sermon on politics and democracy, and a sermon on how religion, our UU religion of democracy, embedded in our Unitarian Universalist faith. Religion on its own, or politics on its own, each fraught with triggers. Mixing the two is dicey, yet the spheres are not separate. The UU principle to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of all brings us to civil rights. Our respect for the interdependent web connects us to environmental justice. Day in and day out, we draw these connections. Our fifth UU principle is not so subtle. It directly states UU congregations will affirm and promote the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. Right there, we view the democratic process as a principle of faith. It's not new. When the Unitarians and Universalists merged in 1961, it was stated this way: UU congregations affirm, defend, and promote the supreme worth of every human personality, the dignity of man, and the use of the democratic method in human relationships. Lifting democracy as one of our religious principles goes back further. In the 1940s, Reverend A. Powell Davies, minister at the All Souls Unitarian Church in D.C., successfully had the democratic method identified as a nationwide core value of the faith. Davies was born in England at the turn of the century, and in England was trained as a Methodist minister. He came to the United States in 1928 and was a consistent and persistent public advocate for civil liberties, government accountability, family planning, and desegregation. In time, he shifted, and in 1933 was fellowshipped as a Unitarian minister. Consider his context. He was raised during World War I in Europe, lived through the Depression in the United States, and was developing these shared Unitarian values well into World War II. He'd experienced fascism, was part of a world struggling to respond to communism, and he still held his long-term social justice concerns. In the mid-40s, Reverend Davies was appointed to a national committee which was charged to advance the Unitarian faith. There was hope for advance that was a growth in membership, and two, the advance held a conviction that Unitarian tradition could make the world a more just and peaceful place. Only 5 principles agreed to, and one was the democratic process in human relations. It stuck, and it's still around. Recall that Reverend Davies was the spiritual leader of congregations around the Beltway, congregations such as this one that were planted and expanded, the center of U.S. government. A decade later, he was still expounding on democracy. In a sermon in 1954, the Unitarian Faith, April 4th, 1954, he offered, "Unitarianism is an inclusive, not an exclusive faith, based on individual freedom of belief. Finding salvation not through someone else's martyrdom, but by education and the disciplines of democracy." Hear this bold claim. He found democracy a saving force. A commitment of the Unitarian faith is to democracy, not merely as a political system, but just and brotherly way in human relations. We think that discussion is the path to agreement. We are educators, one of another, and all can learn from each. We are well aware that democracy can be a discipline, and sometimes a harsh one. But this is part of its value. We grow by learning to get along with other people. We grow even more when we learn to respect and like each other, to have a concern for all, in the words of the New Testament, to love one another. For Davies, democracy was not only a public institution, but also a moral institution. He worried that democracy would be taken for granted. He saw modern democracy needed advocates and protection. It was not a squishy niceness. Davies had seen the alternatives to democracy and put his trust in an engaged democracy. An engaged democracy, not a vote and move on democracy. He saw the best method of protection was to participate in and live into the deep ideals of living by working through difference. And differences we will have. While humans have a propensity at some deep, hardwired level to cooperate with one another in social groups for survival and fulfillment, we also have a propensity for violence within and among groups. And we're smart. Well, sort of. We can observe our own ability, this tension, to both get along and to fight. We do our best to set up rules to try and resist this violence. Institutions of many sorts do this. Religion, at its best, is one of those institutions. It can help us live together in compassion. Societal rules and governance try to do the same, all imperfectly. At their best, institutions guard universal rights. Religious organizations try to balance these competing propensities and call us to think beyond material wealth. This sense of institutions having the capacity for peace-encouraging rules is the case made in the book The Future of Freedom by journalist Fareed Zakaria. He looks at these human tendencies of cooperation, violence, and rule setting and finds democracy is a tool for living into these challenges. He sees democracy as hard, and too, it is our best hope. We balance. In Zagaria's words, the rise of modern democracy gives all people the opportunity of ruling themselves on the basis of mutual recognition of the dignity and right of their fellow humans. Sound familiar? He reminds that as we moved from tribes to states, we lost some of the natural connections and ways of mutual recognition. As we have rebuilt, we have found needs for rules of law that allow freedom and make room for plurality, for difference. I sense our trust in the institutions of democracy slipping. Our founding documents, adjusted over time, have checks and balances in the way that allows those governed to determine how we are governed. Let's be real here too. The initial setup was for white, male landowners to do the deciding and the government. And slowly these principles have changed. The democracy created was to be deliberate and slow. This foundation is sturdy, but not a guarantee. Frustrations are high and cynicism festers. Our democracy is not a guarantee. I hear this as Davies' central point. The imperfect institution needs to be protected and improved, and this is the mantle we are called to carry. Modern democracy offers a path toward affirming the inherent worth and dignity of all. It is a moral assumption. It is a moral aspiration. Are we individually and collectively ready to risk for democracy, to heal democracy? Parker Palmer sees that it is healing that is needed and finds our path to healing requires engagement. Parker focuses on the role of citizen, a world citizen. He defines citizenship as a way of being in the world, rooted in the knowledge that I am a member of a vast community of humans and non-human beings that I depend on for essentials I could never provide for myself. Parker resists romantic fantasies. He finds that living into citizenship as a way of being means going deeper into our understanding of one another, before self-interest and beyond. Palmer approaches the challenges of democracy in a nonpartisan manner, with the heart of a Quaker. Palmer worries about the 21st century relentless media cycles, with its partial truths repeated and filled with misinformation. He finds there has been a deep price of less and less community involvement, which in the past has allowed us to know one another across difference. He sees this distancing as the root cause of challenge. Palmer finds there is a hope for democracy that emerges when we learn to speak up without denying others their humanity. Can we hold multiple truths? Democracy holds us or calls us to hold in tension individual freedom and collective responsibility, among other tensions. Democracy is about voting, but it has to be more. For democracy to work, we need to bring our whole selves to the process, head, heart, and energy. We have to be in connection across difference. Yet, as challenges have mounted, many have pulled back, often living in echo chambers and those who agree with them. This past week again, our hearts break. This pattern of isolation challenged. Individuals in brown and black bodies murdered because of the color of their skin. Racism and patterns of white supremacy and white privilege, too, cost the lives of police officers this week. Our hearts are torn. For those of us that identify as white, this may feel raw. Maybe we are more awake than in the past. Torn, sharing some vulnerability. For those living in brown and black bodies, this vulnerability is not new, not at all. We call for action. We want to do something. As a start, I wonder which relationships we each reached out to this week. Were you in contact with a wider group of community contacts, colleagues, and friends than you were in contact with just last year as we heard of shootings in Charleston, South Carolina? I've tried to widen my circle and found the who of my week had shifted. On the Eastern Shore, I've gotten to know some in the community across difference, and we talked and texted this week. Earlier, we heard an excerpt from Parker Palmer's book, a call to deeply engage and a knowing that, yes, our hearts will break. Will our hearts break open to possibility instead of breaking apart? Can we have a greater capacity to hold the complexities and contradictions of human experience? The result may be new life. Isn't that what it takes to live in democracy? To authentically participate, to listen and to speak up, to risk, to trust in a democratic system we know as is imperfect, but maybe in its most engaged forms, is it our best hope to get through the challenges of human relations, to share ideas, feelings, and emotion? We're called as citizens in a democracy to hold life's many tensions consciously, faithfully, until our hearts are opened. It is in doing so that we sustain and build trust, so we may live into the responsibility of governing ourselves. Where is hope in a week like this, a month like this, a decade like this? In the muck of human experience, I see the hope is in the relationships and the capacity of the human heart to see more than one perspective and to trust you are not alone. In this week and in the election season and the months to come, may we each look for opportunities, however small, to build trust in the ongoing experiment that is democracy. Remembering democracy is, as Parker Palmer says, not something we have, but something we must do. May it be so.
Daring Vision, Extinguishing Chalice by Maureen Killoran. We extinguish this chalice flame, daring to carry forward the vision of this free earth, that freedom, reason, and justice will one day prevail in this nation and across this earth.